Hello, welcome to Revive and Rise. I'm your host, Melody Parrish, and I want to thank you so much for joining us today. So today I'm going to continue sharing stories about my brother, and I'll be doing that for the remainder of the year. And I want to thank you for letting me do that. Thank you for listening. I'm going to share the story and then share a powerful lesson that I've learned, either at the time or when looking back throughout life, for those stories from when I was a child. And I want to also point out, again, as I do every episode, that when we talk about grief and the grief of a loved one or somebody that you care about, there is no time limit. There's no time limit, and there's no way to grieve. We're all individuals, and we all do things differently and can handle things differently. And there's nothing that says by now you should be over this, or like many people think. And sometimes it's just a word or just a memory or just a thought that triggers something, and the grief will set in. So this is just a reminder that that's real, that those feelings are real, and that it's okay. So, talking about my brother, many of you, especially if you knew me and knew my brother, or you've been listening to other episodes, he had severe mental illness, and things like severe schizophrenia, agoraphobia, OCD, panic attacks, and many other things. And so we lived about less than a mile from the Charleston Mental Health Center. And whenever he was able to, he had an amazing psychiatrist there, Dr. Kathleen Cuvallo, and now she's Kathleen Miller. I think the last I heard, she has her own private practice in North Carolina. But she was absolutely amazing, and amazing with my brother. She knew how to handle him. She was very compassionate. She was able to do a lot of things with him and to help his healing and his abilities to manage his various struggles. And one thing that they would do is support groups, peer support groups. And he would do that because he felt comfortable being there. Even though there were other people there, he felt comfortable. He felt comfortable because he was around people that were similar to him, and I can understand that. Many people can understand that. We're all very comfortable around people that are similar to us in some way or the other. And so he was well liked there. Everybody knew him, therefore everybody knew me as well. Everybody liked him. He got along with everyone. He talked to everyone, and as I've said in previous episodes, he always greeted everybody. He made sure to greet everybody that was around him in every possible way. So he was well liked there. And sometimes when he was having very difficult struggles, we would call Dr. Miller and set up an appointment. And sometimes I would go with him. And when I would go, and I would just wait there with him in the waiting room, and I would see some of his friends. I would see people that were familiar and people that weren't familiar to me. But it was amazing how the camaraderie there was, how each of them cared for each other. Sure, they could turn right around and be aggravated with each other or upset with each other, but they still cared about each other, and they showed that. It wasn't just a spoken thing, they showed it. They had a vending machine in the waiting room at the mental health center. And one person would have enough money to go up and get a drink or a bag of chips or some other snack or something like that. So that person would go up, and then one of them would ask, "Oh, can you get me something?" And that individual would either say yes or no. They would either get them something, or they would say no, or they would say, "Well, I've got 30 cents, or I've got 20 cents, or something like that." And so they'd give them the change, and then they'd sit back down. And then another person would come up, and this would continue, and they would do the same thing. Making sure that each other had what they needed or what they wanted, but also making sure that they were caring for each other when they didn't have to give. And what my brother would do, he loved jokes, and he loved making people laugh in whatever way he could. Either sharing a funny story, watching a funny movie, telling a joke, or doing something silly. We had that in common, both of us. We share that, just wanting to make people laugh and wanting to make people happy. And so whenever we would be sitting in the waiting area of the mental health center, people would go up to the vending machine, as I said before, and they would make their selection. The selection would come down, and then they'd have to bend over to reach in and get it, either into the drink machine or into the snack machine. And when they reached down, they bent down to get it, my brother would look, and he would get this glistening in his eyes, and then he'd smile. And those that were around him knew what he was going to do, because he did it every time. And they would smile too. And then all of a sudden, he would make this noise just like that. And it would be so loud. And the person would stand straight up because it would scare them at first. And everybody in the waiting room would just laugh. And my brother would laugh too. And it was such a collection of laughter. And at that same moment that we're all laughing, you see the woman in the corner that's curled up and terrified, looking around, so paranoid. You would see one of the gentlemen there walking through that would be talking to the voices in his head. You would see others that were scared, that were struggling in some way, that were anxious. And they would be in that room too. So there was so much joy. And then there was those that were struggling. And my brother would do that every time. So it would happen several times within one visit. And after a couple of times, you would see that anxious individual and a smile would come over their face. You would see the paranoid lady in the corner chuckle a little. You would see the guy that was talking to people that weren't there. He would look over and he would laugh and then get back to his conversation. But it was so amazing to see that joy and that pain existed at the same time. And I know, even at those moments, when my brother he was struggling too. And I knew because I talked to him every day, multiple times a day. He would call me at least 10 times a day. So I knew his struggles. And yet he could sit in that waiting room and look around him and see all of the other people and make them laugh and make himself laugh. And he did it every time, no matter how bad he felt. It didn't matter to him how bad he felt. He still did it. And everybody loved him for it. You know, whenever he would go in, he would walk in the door and everybody would, hey, 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 make sure to say hey to him. How you doing? Da, 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 da. And just talk, just chat. Every person in there. And that's just the life he lived. And every time I experienced it, I was just blown away. I was blown away at the love that was in that waiting room. I was also blown away by the joy and the pain that was in that waiting room. But it was also the anger, the frustration, the anxiety, the fear, the uncertainty, all of those emotions, all of that was in that waiting room in each one of those individuals. And there was my brother. He was so loved and he was so well liked, and no matter what he felt, no matter what he was feeling inside, he put that aside to make everybody laugh. And I started thinking about that. I've thought about it many times, and I've told many people that story. Because we as human beings need to know, and we need to understand that emotions are not concrete. Emotions are not this or that. You can't just love someone or just dislike someone. You can't only be angry about something or only be happy about something. So many emotions exist at one time. And it's up to us to understand why. It's up to us to understand, to acknowledge them, and then understand why they're happening, understand what's going on, why are we feeling them, and is there anything that we need to change so that we won't feel them, or so that we will feel differently. It's okay to be happy about something yet sad at the same time. It's also okay to be angry about something and something good come from it. We don't always have to look at fear as a negative thing. Fear is something that presents itself so that it can teach us something. Anger is something that presents itself to teach us something. We just need to pay attention. You can be happy and sad at the same time. Joy and pain enter the same space so many times. I think about my life, and I've had a really difficult time the last, I would say 5-6 years, and it's gotten really difficult. But one of the things that has brought me out is learning about the emotions that I feel, and learning why I'm feeling them, learning how to recognize them, and learning how to control myself when they happen. When that fear comes, what do I do? When that anger comes, what do I do? How do I express myself? Do I yell? Do I scream? Do I walk away? Do I just pause? Do I laugh it off? What is my reaction? Because that is the one thing in life that we can control. We can't control how other people react. We can't control how other people think or how other people behave. But what we can control is how we react to something, how we behave, how we feel. We're the only ones that can control that. When something happens or someone does something to us or doesn't behave in the way that we thought, we're the only ones that control how that affects us. And we're the only ones that can control what we do next. If something hurts, what are we going to do? Sure, it's going to continue to hurt, but how are we going to respond? If we feel joy, how are we going to respond to that joy? And when so many things happen at once, how are we going to respond to each one of them? And how did they all fit together? Because they all fit together. One thing that I've definitely learned from my time in therapy is that everything is connected. Everything just builds. Because once we have an experience, just as a human being, just as we are, we learn something from that. And our survival mode will set in. And it'll either protect us or let it happen again. But it's all connected. We may try something different, and it may happen again. We may try something different. It may happen a 10th time. But that's what we do. We learn, and they build. Everything builds. And so I think about all that I'm doing and all that I've done in my life and over the past years, the past few years of this internal work that I've been doing. And I think of all the times in life that's happened. And before I started therapy, I didn't believe. I believed you had to be one or the other. You either had to have one emotion or the other emotion, one reaction or the other reaction. You couldn't have many at one time. To me, emotions were concrete, and to me, the reactions were like a test. It was like a test. If this happened, this was your response. If this happened, this was your response. And that's how it went. And that's what I thought. For a large part of my life, that was just my understanding. And I didn't realize that so many different things could happen. And when I started to understand that and I started to look at that, I started journaling. And that was probably the greatest thing that I did for myself, was that I would write. And I wrote stream of consciousness. So I didn't have a prompt. I didn't have a question. I just wrote what I was thinking. And I wrote what was in my head. And I just got it all out. And when I looked back, I looked at the emotions that I felt. And I started noticing that there were so many emotions. And I started asking myself, why? Why was there this emotion? And I started noticing a pattern that when I started feeling this emotion, that I would get scared. And I would do this. When I started feeling this emotion, I would get angry. And so I would do this. And I started noticing a pattern throughout my journal. And I kept a journal for years, actually. I even wrote a book about about the pages of my journal. And it just helped me to understand myself more and more. The more I wrote, the more I understood myself. The more I understood what I was feeling, and the more I understood why I was feeling it. And the greater that point was proven to me, because in my times when I had so much pain and so much anger and so much fear of the unknown, there was also joy there. There was also thankfulness that was there. I know if you've been listening long enough, or if you've read my books, you know that I had an illness when I was 14 that left me with limited ability to move, difficulty eating. And in that pain, I was still thankful. There were still times of joy. In those moments when I couldn't even toilet myself, I couldn't even get myself dressed, there were times I was still able to laugh. There were still times that I was thankful. I was thankful to be alive. I was thankful for the movements that I was able to make. When I was in my physical therapy sessions, I was joyous when I was able to do things. When I was able to reach for cones and grab them, when I had enough grip in my hands to grab the cone, when I had enough strength in my arm to lift my arm to get the cones that were higher, when I stood up in the parallel bars and took a step or two. All of these times, I was joyful. In the midst of all this darkness and pain and suffering, when someone I cared about would show up for a visit, it would make me so happy. When I got into my car accident and I again had limited movement and I had my traumatic brain injury, one thing that I can remember about those times when I was filled with so much anger and so much fear and so much uncertainty was the joy that people brought me. When I was at my physical therapy sessions, when I was around friends, when I was around my family members, when I was around people that cared. And I thought about all these things. And it's something that people don't realize. Because, when I first had my brain injury, I had a lot of misplaced emotions. So I would laugh at something that was really sad. And I would cry at something that was really happy. I remember, I'm so thankful that many of my friends understood this, because one friend came up and just told us that she had been to a funeral, and I just burst out laughing. I just couldn't tell, my mind couldn't tell my body what to do. And I couldn't make sense of those things. And when we think about all these things, we need to understand that sometimes most people will never experience that. Most people will never experience the misplaced emotions and those kind of things, but we all experience times when we're so sad and we're so heartbroken, but we're tired of crying and something makes us laugh. Or we either make a joke to make others laugh around us because we don't want them to feel that way. I spent a long part of my life, and I feel like I still do it, making sure that people do not feel the things that I have felt. No matter how I'm feeling or what I'm feeling, I don't want anybody around me to feel anything like I have felt that is negative. And so I'll do whatever necessary to try and make them feel better, if I can. If I can't, I'll just sit there and listen, because sometimes you can't make people feel better, and sometimes the only thing you can do is listen. That's the best thing you can do. But we need to understand, and we need to make space for all of the emotions that we feel and for all of the emotions that other people express. Nothing is one-sided. And we can learn that lesson from my brother. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today, for listening to me. I hope that something I said affected you in a positive way. I hope it helped make things clearer, or helped you in some way. I hope you felt seen and heard, and I hope that you know that whatever you're struggling with, whatever you're facing, you do not have to struggle alone. Thank you.